Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to go over is basically how to do a residual plot in your Casio. Again, go to statistics. Make sure you enter all your data in list 1 and in list 2. All right, and now once you've listed all your information here, before you start graphing, you got to go in and check your setup. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Shift Setup, which is your Shift menu. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to come down here and you're going to click on residual list, arrow down to residual list. Now, typically what I have here is it'll say none. But what you want to do is you want to make sure when we go back to exit, we want to make sure our residual list shows up here. So I'm going to use L1 as my X's, L2 is my response variables, and L3 is going to be my residual list. So I'm going to go Shift Setup again. I'm going to go down to residual list, and I'm going to choose the list which I want to go in there. So I want list 3 to be my residuals. Hit execute. Now once you have that set up, you can exit out. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and hit graph. That's F1. And before you do anything, you want to set up your graphs. So I'm going to set up. Now notice this is stat graph number 1. This is a scatter plot, and it's list 1 and list 2. All right, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to change my mark type. I'm just going to have them put X's here. All right, then I want, again, go back to setup. I want to set up graph number 2. Now, graph number 2, I want a scatter plot, but in my scatter plot, I want to do my X list and my residuals. So you need to change this list to list 3. So you can just click on list and just hit 3, and it'll change it for you. Now, when I graph this, when I graph 2, it's going to graph my residual plot. So I'm going to hit exit. Notice graph number 1, there's my data. All right, I'm going to do calculate, linear, A plus BX, and there's my line of best fit. That's my LSRL. This is my predicted line. So Y hat is equal to 33.12 minus 4.69. Again, you'll hit copy. Go ahead and hit execute. It'll replace anything that's in your graphing section, and then you can draw. Now, if you exit out of here, or go back to menu, go to number 5. You can go ahead and select it and hit execute, and there it is. And from here, you can predict. Let's say I want to predict. Let's do shift trace. I want to predict when X is 4.5. What is Y going to be? And that's 12.035. Now, if you want to find your residual by hand, you go back to your menu. You go back to stats. Go down to 4.5. Now notice 4.5, well, I must have passed it. Oh, right here, 4.5. When you have X is 4.5, your actual data is 10. Well, if you recall, my predicted Y value, let me trace, so 4.5, my predicted Y value is 12.035. Well, if you take your observed data of 10 and you subtract negative 12.035, you get a residual of negative 2.035. And so that just further confirms what your residual is. All right, now let's go ahead and graph this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit graph. I want graph number 2. And if you notice, this is my residual plot. This is those positive and negative numbers and how they relate to the x-axis. So notice here, there is no pattern. Therefore, it is a very good linear relationship.